my name is Letty Oliver Sanchez. I am your Chief of Innovative Education for the association. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I will go ahead and make a couple of announcements of some great events we have coming up. We've got some of Evian's legal updates that you can find at miamire.com/antitrust. And you will see all of her legal updates that we have scheduled for the remainder of the month. We also have the District 4 Conference, which comprises of 2.5 days, at Isla Morada. And we've got some great speakers. We've got the FR CEO, along with the legal counsel for Florida Realtors. We also have Kevin Sears, which is the NAR president. And you can find that information at district4conference.com. We have a negotiations class, which is taking place June 17 at our new headquarters. And it's going to be a CRS negotiations. With no further ado, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Khalid Bryan. He is one of our YPN leaders, and he's got a great presentation for you today on getting savvy with Section 8. Khalid?
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna get into this. Even you're good. Nothing to add before I get into it.
Just one quick disclaimer, because I can't help myself. This is not legal advice or representation. This webinar is for educational purposes only. So please keep that in mind. As Khalid stated earlier, please put all of your questions in the chat. We will get to the questions at the end of the webinar. So please put them there. Also keep the chat open, because I'll be dropping links there. We all will be dropping links there as we go throughout the presentation. We are recording, keep that in mind. And also I defer to Khalid. If you want to share the slides after the fact, I am fine with that. If you would like to share, yes. Okay, so we will do that after the fact today, and those are all of my disclaimers. So back to you.
I love it. All right, so let's get into it. So getting savvy with Section 8, Part 1. This is going to be best practices as a realtor. What's your role? What you should be doing, and just how to be a good realtor. So things to know. Section 8 is an additional income source. It's not a type of person. It's not a type of property. To say they just built some Section 8 houses up the street, incorrect statement. Inspections are required before lease commencement and renewal. So that means even though you did pass the inspection the first time to move the tenant in, when that landlord wants to renew the lease, they're going to send another inspector out to make sure the property is still in good, safe living order. If there is an association, they won't schedule the inspection until after you have association approval. They will not waste their time and send their inspector out if you're not ready to move in. Let's see, where are we? Credit, background, and income screening, that's still required on every contract to lease you submit, whether it's using Section 8, the government funds, or not. You're going to do every single transaction the same way. So just because the rent is guaranteed, that does not mean you don't need to still verify their income for whatever their portion of rent is. It doesn't mean you don't still need to look at their credit report, and it doesn't mean you don't have to run a, credit, background, and Evian, I have a question for you. If I'm not mistaken, eviction checks, you can't do that anymore. Can you still do eviction checks? I think they took it away in Dade.
Well, so they took it away. If you all will go back in time with me to, I don't remember what year, what are we in, 2024? So 2022, there was the 2021-2022, there was the Tenants Bill of Rights, and it passed here in Miami-Dade County. It was a local law. There were lots of other municipalities throughout Florida that also passed various Tenants Bill of Rights. That went through. And what you are referencing, the sort of ban the box on eviction checks, that did pass. However, in last year's legislative session in 2023, fast forward to 2023, in that legislative session, HB 1417 was passed into law, and that new law at the state level, right, it preempted all of the local laws that veered from that or were different from the state landlord tenant laws. So what happened? We had a bunch of Tenants Bill of Rights and the state locally, and then the state came in and said, nope, That's not happening. Everybody needs to get back on the same page. State law is the state law. So effectively, where does that leave us? That means that it is okay to look at eviction history now when you are, that is a legitimate thing to look at. Eviction history when you are vetting a potential tenant. So we are clear on that. I'm going to put our legal update on that in the chat so that anybody who has a burning desire to read about it in detail, I will put it there.
Okay, thank you. That's why we do this class together. Okay, so yes, you still want to do a background check, credit check. And when it comes to an income check, we're used to seeing we need to see income of at least 2.5 to 3 times the rent. Well, if your rent is $3,000 a month and the tenant portion is only $1,000 a month, then their 2.5 to 3 times the rent comes into their portion of rent that they're actually paying. So keep that in mind when your owner says they don't make enough, but they're using a housing voucher. They only have to pay $500 a month. You don't really need them to make $80,000 a year. So that's a big thing that a lot of people get confused about. Where that doesn't come into play is when a homeowners or condo association has in their bylaws a strict income and credit requirement. We can't really do much about that. So it's important to just look into it.
And I'll jump in there. So, right, you all, I hate these scenarios for our members because it puts our members in a really bad spot. You all are stuck in the middle of HOAs, or condo associations who have bylaws that violate fair housing laws. That are very clear discriminatory practices, right? And we'll talk about, I'm sure we'll get questions in the chat about what about credit scores? Is that okay to ask about that? I'm sure we'll get that later. And we'll talk about that later. But you know, there are some condo associations who will flat out tell you we don't accept Section 8 vouchers, right? We don't rent to people with Section 8 vouchers. That is housing discrimination. That is not okay. That is not allowed. You all, as the realtors representing your customers in these transactions, are now in a really bad spot because you don't want to enable that bad behavior, right? You don't want to be complicit to that housing discrimination. So what do? Right? Like, what do you practically do? The first thing that you should do is advise your customer that that is housing discrimination and not your housing discrimination. That is on the condo and HOA. And what can they do? One of the things that they can do is you can refer them to Hope Fair Housing. I'll also drop that in the chat momentarily, the contact information. You can report fair housing discrimination to them. Hope regularly files cases on behalf of their clients who have faced discrimination based on Section 8 or source of income. That is one route. You know, you can tell your client, your customer, to go lawyer up, right? You should tell them to go lawyer up. They can go to legal services. They can, and legal services is probably the place to go. I'll drop some other resources in the chat here momentarily, but really important to tell them to go get legal advice because you yourself, like, you can sure give them the resources, but as far as filing a housing discrimination complaint, that's going to be on your customer. Now, that said, right, those are their legal rights, but I also understand, practically speaking, that this is a problem because, you know, if your customer sues the condo association, number one, it's going to take way too long to even rent there, right? Like, they're reasonably speaking, like, they're not going to be able to get in there to deal with the housing complaint fast enough to get into that unit. Number two, once you've sued someone or brought a housing complaint against them, probably not the most place that they're going to want to live in, right? It might be a hostile situation from the condo association side, right? They might be a little salty about that. Too bad, but they might get a little salty about that. So it is really important to remember that if you face this, you need to give your customers the resources that they need to go file the complaints if they choose to, not required. And you can also push back on the condo association, right? I've spoken with members who have called them out and been like, this is housing discrimination. You need to get it together. And they've gotten their customers in. So, you know, you yourself, like, there is nothing preventing you from calling out that behavior.
Thank you. And if you do have like a random legal question or you're not sure, you can always call the legal hotline. I have the number at the end of this presentation. I'll show it to you. But yes, you do still need to verify all of these information just as you would any other tenant. You don't treat anyone differently. And like I was saying, tenants pay a portion of rent based on their income. And this is the thing a lot of people don't realize. Just because someone's using a Section 8 voucher, that does not mean they have a low credit score, and that does not mean they have a low income. It could be a situation where maybe they have a very large family, and while on paper their income is reasonable, just to support a family this size, you cannot afford a house that big, so you will need the government's assistance. Just the same, I've done Section 8 transactions, and my client has had a 700 something credit score, and we were able to go anywhere we wanted. So just keep in mind, treat no one differently. After each lease term, I kind of shuffle this. Housing has the final say on what your rent price is. You tell them what you want, but they're going to make the decision. In the event the owner doesn't get as much rent as he was hoping for, he or she was hoping for, at the end of the lease term, housing gives them the opportunity to do a new application, and you can raise the rent at that time if you need to. They understand the market changes every year, and they understand, you know, owners' expenses change every year. So they do give you the opportunity to raise the rent. A new inspection is done though, like I was saying, and the tenant is also reevaluated. They look at their income every year to make sure they didn't get a raise. Because at a certain point, you can get raises to the point where you no longer need the government's assistance, in which case they will have you come off of the program so they can bring in another family that needs it. The biggest thing, defrauding a government agency is a punishable offense, and it's very easy to defraud the government agency when you're not thinking about what you're doing. So something so simple as the owner wants $1,250, the tenant voucher is only for $1,240, and the tenant says, look, I'll give them the extra, what is it, $10 or $100 a month. You're gonna have to submit the documentation to the government saying this rent is $1,250 or $1,240, and you're gonna have a separate documentation saying $1,250. That's fraud. You're telling the government one thing to get them to give you money. Can't do that. On the flip side, if a tenant, you got it, yeah?
No, I'm going to jump in to say that I've litigated those cases. The federal government gets first dibs on those cases. They're False Claims Act cases that the U.S. Attorney's Office picks up. They are not cute. They are serious. The U.S. Attorney's offices regularly prosecute these cases against landlords who are taking extra money, side payments from tenants. So don't be complicit in that either.
You will have to take a stand sometimes as an agent. It's great to just have the money right there in your face, and both parties will say, I'm down, I don't care, but you yourself will be in the middle of this. You have to shut it down. It's totally on you to shut it down. Another situation where a potential risk for yourself is housing takes account how much people make and how many people in the household are working. So if you have a prospect that may say, look, this person's living with me, but don't put them on the application, you can't tell housing only one person's in there when you know there's two. So you yourself will have to submit this fraudulent information. So you, again, another situation, you got to shut it down because you'll be in the middle. We're not going to go too deep into this because this is a whole nother topic. This is legal stuff. So Evian's got that. Where is my next slide? Boom. Things to know continued. The tenant pays a security deposit, application fees, and their portion of rent out of pocket. Housing pays all 12 months, so the tenant doesn't prepay last. What that means is when someone's moving into a rental property, we're used to them paying first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. If the rent's $1,000 a month, we're used to that being $3,000 of move-in funds. If you're using a Section 8 voucher, however, and the tenant's portion of first month's or of every month's rent is only $500 a month, then their security deposit, that's from them. That's going to be the whole $1,000, but their first and last month is going to look like $500 first, 500 security, only 500 last. Does that make sense? So the owner is going to have to understand that that first month's payment from the housing authority is going to take a little while to come in, especially if they move in on a date other than the first of the month. It has to get processed. They have a whole ACH system that on the first and between the first and fifth, it automatically sends out these payments. So if you're added to that after they sent the payment out, you got to wait until the next cycle. So it's important that you make sure the property owner is aware of that. That also affects your commission. In an instance like this, where first and last is only half or a 25 or a fraction of what it should have been, there's not enough money there for you to get your commission out of. You can't take a commission out of a security deposit. You can't touch a security deposit. So you also will have to either work it out with the property owner for them to cut you a check personally, or you'll have to wait until they get paid and get paid out of that. So that's another thing you'll have to know and be able to explain to the listing agent so you're not at walkthrough all looking confused and angry at each other. I just covered this. Housing pays ACH between the first and fifth. Just make sure the owner is aware so they're not looking at the tenant like, where's my money? The tenant is only responsible for the tenant portion. The housing authorities got their side. Yes.
We're getting a comment to slow it down just a
Okay.
notch. I suffer from this as well. Sorry, y'all.
Okay.
We will slow
I
it
get
down.
excited. I get excited about all the information. I got you. Absolutely. Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
I'll just continue. I won't start over. So for part 3, the payment can go to either the owner or the property management company. So when the tenant comes with their housing packet or their voucher or whatever it is they refer to it as, you're gonna fill it out, and in it, there's gonna be a page where it's gonna ask, where do you want the rent payments to go? It can go to either the owner at the owner's account. They're gonna have to provide a W-9, something showing that they're the owner. They want a copy of the deed. And also the name on the account has to match the name of the owner on the W-9 and the deed. If it's gonna go to a property management company, then they will need to see an executed property management agreement. I thought that's the gist of that point there. I already said commissions cannot come from security deposits. They can't be touched because if you get paid out of it, it's gone. Where's the security deposit now? This is another bad habit that as a listing agent, I hear a lot of agents do, which you guys really have to stop. Stop calling listing agents on their rental listings and asking them, do you guys accept Section 8? You can't pick and choose if you're gonna work with a government agency or not. Everyone is welcome to apply for any property. You can't make that decision to say, no, they can't apply. That's really important. You can and will get sued over this. This is a question.
Thank you for calling out. Thank you for calling that out. And highlighting that our members regularly get sued for this up, down, all around the state. So do not engage in tenant screening over the telephone. And before you go to your next point, we're getting a bunch of questions in the chat while you're on this topic. Can you cover again the point about deposits, right? Can you talk about security deposits?
Yes. So security deposits, the housing authority, they don't pay that for the tenant. They're just helping with the monthly rents. The tenant is responsible to come up with their own security deposit in most cases. There are some cases where there is an outside agency that will give them security deposit funds, which is a whole nother process. That's not Section 8, so that's not on me to cover. But in more often than not, the tenant is responsible to come up with their own security deposit. So you want to ask them, do you have your deposit ready if you're working with someone using Section 8? Just the same, if you're going to accept the Section 8 offer, just verify, do you have your deposit ready? And they'll tell you yes. More often than not, they do, because they know their caseworker tells them that is, oh, hi, Precious. We have to hold questions, though. We have to put in the chat. Put your question in the chat. But hi, I'll see you later at the Brokers Open. There was another question I was supposed to cover. It was a two-parter.
So there was the deposit, so you covered that generally. And then, and then as an example, what happens when the owner wants 2 months of a deposit, or can you charge 2 months of a deposit, and general best practices? And this is that point that I wanted you to dive into in detail so we could have a discussion on it.
Okay, I got you. So as far as if an owner is requesting a 2-month security deposit, that has to be just what they're requesting. It has to be, whether you're using Section 8 or not, this property wants a 2-month security deposit. If the owner says, well, because you're using Section 8, I want a 2-month security deposit, that sounds like discrimination to me. I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds like you can't do that.
It is. It is. It's a problem.
That would be treating one party different than the other based on their source of income. Can't. So it doesn't change. If I'm moving in and I'm not using Section 8, you're gonna want my security deposit. If someone using housing, you're gonna want this. You're not gonna tell me I need 2 because I'm a real estate broker. You couldn't. I hope that helped cover the deposit part. But there was another part in this chat, and it was a good question. I really
also another question. Okay, you go. You go first.
Yeah, I just read it. How do you answer the question, do you accept Section 8? No matter who asked me, no matter what the situation, I just said, absolutely, everyone can apply. Anyone can apply in any situation, any listing. Just always say that anyone can apply. You'll also have to explain this to your property owners too when you're getting your listings, because you'll have some owners that just aren't educated on it, and they'll say, I don't want to deal with no Section 8. And that's your time to say, listen, I'm sorry, but we can't just exclude someone based on their source of income. And that's your chance to explain to them what Section 8 is, how it works, and why it's great. So,
and also, as a follow-up to that and piggyback, look, people with Section 8 vouchers were some of the, those were some of the safest bets, especially during the pandemic when nobody had money to pay rent and nobody was paying their rent. And the people that were paying their rent were folks with vouchers, right? Because that was government money. So, there are so many benefits to Section 8, and I'm so glad you're here today to talk about them from, the perspective of a practitioner who is working with individuals and families who have vouchers, because the answer is yes, right? And if you have, and Khalid, what if you have an owner that is like, I don't care what you say, I'm never going to rent to a family with Section 8. I don't care what you say. What should you do?
I have to turn down that listing. I can't take it. It's not worth my license. It's not worth the fines. It's not worth whatever is going to rain down on me from working with this client and portraying their thought process to you. Because a thing to note is, even if a owner tries to say that and you try to discreetly support it, how would you explain declining a perfectly fine offer? If they're qualified, their credit checks out, their income's okay, the payment's covered by the government, what's wrong with the offer? Why are you denying it? Sometimes you're gonna have to answer that. Why are you denying this offer? So it's not worth it. It's just never worth it. This next point is also like an open-ended question I wanted Evian to kind of like confirm. To refuse help to someone due to their income source or income amount is also a punishable offense. Would that be discriminating if I say I can't work with you because you're using Section 8, or I don't work with you because you aren't qualified for enough? Can you, both things you can't do?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so if we take, a few steps back and think about the big picture and what is housing discrimination? And by the way, spoiler alert, Khalid and I will be here next Wednesday, and not the following one, but the one after that. And we will have another guest joining us at the end of the month. So we're going to be here all month talking to you about these concepts and principles. One, because it's Fair Housing Month, and two, because it's always Fair Housing Month, right? And so if we take a few steps back and we think about what is housing discrimination and why are we talking about Section 8 source of income as housing discrimination, what is this all about, right? So the basic fundamental principles of fair housing are that you have to give everyone equal service, right? And if you are not providing everyone with equal service and access, right? And it's not just about getting the home, it's not just about getting the rental, it's about even being able to access services and your services, right? If you are denying a group of people a service that is, and those people are part of a protected class. So here in Miami-Dade County and a bunch of other counties in Florida, and honestly, it doesn't really matter anymore with the litigation, because Section 8 voucher holders tend to be individuals and families that are, heads of household that are women, protected class, families of color, protected class, race, right? Those with people with disabilities, again, protected class. All of these are protected classes. If you are denying someone service because they have Section 8, that is having a disparate impact, meaning it is disproportionately impacting protected classes, and therefore it is discrimination. And for a good watch, we would highly recommend that if you haven't seen it already, the Newsday report, the video reporting on fair housing issue and Section 8 fair housing issues in Long Island. It was Long Island Divided. I'll find the YouTube link and put it in the chat here shortly, that you can go and watch it. Highly recommend you watch it, because it was, and there's been lawsuits recently too out of New York and everywhere else, right? And some of the lawsuits, folks are like, but I didn't even know what Section 8 was, so how can I be discriminating? No, absolutely not. If you are denying equal access to services, that is also housing discrimination. So if somebody approaches you with a voucher to work with them, denying somebody service, again, based on their voucher, that is discriminatory.
Right. I just want to touch on Justinia's, I hope I say your name right. Justina. She asked who pays commission and how long does it take? I'm pretty sure that was when I was speeding through my presentation. So I'll touch on it again. Commissions, like I was saying, they cannot come from a security deposit. And in these situations where you're using a Section 8 voucher, the tenant is only going to come to move in with their full security deposit and their portion of first. More often than not, there's not going to be a last month's rent payment, because we already know the government's going to send it. It's coming. And if the owner does insist, I need last, it's only going to be their portion of last. So with that, that's often not enough money to pay both you and the listing brokerage's commissions, or vice versa if you're the listing broker. You have to have that agreement with your owner up front as the listing agent, and just say, listen, if we do end up working with Section 8, here's the process. They're going to need to do an inspection. Don't worry, I'll walk through it and make sure we're good for inspection. They are going to need to approve you. Don't worry, I'll help you with the paperwork. And they are going to need to take a little time to send your first month's direct deposit, because it's all systemized. If we move in the middle of the month, we missed it. We got to wait. So in that event, are you comfortable paying my commission out of pocket and waiting to be reimbursed when you get the rent payment? Otherwise, you'll have to wait until they get the rent payment from housing, and then they'll pay you your commission. Because in my listing agreement that I most often do, it says I get paid at walkthrough. So if the listing agreement says you get paid at walkthrough, you have to let them understand different situations where it may be a challenge to pay me at walkthrough, but I still want my money at walkthrough. The other side of that is, if you have enough time, let's just say it's January and the lease doesn't need to start until March, and the inspection and everything is done by February, then it lines up. It lines up perfectly. You will likely have that payment into the owner's account by the time the tenant moves in. And at that point, they'll be able to give you your money right away. So it all depends. And also, commissions are all negotiable. So who knows what your commission is? If your commission is $200, then they should have that. So another thing to note. I felt good about that. All right, let's go.
You should feel good about that, because you must have read my mind. I was sending you the wavelengths. Commission's always negotiable. Compensation's always negotiable.
Yeah, we've done this before. I got you. I got you. All right. Things to note: vouchers do expire. So just like our pre-approval, they have expiration dates. Ensure it's up to date before accepting. That's accepting to take this person on as a client, and accepting to take this offer as a property owner or a listing agent. There's a gray area here, because you hear me saying you can't say no to working with them, and then you say before you accept them as a client. You have to have your strict guidelines on, this is what I do. This is what I work with. I'm a residential realtor. I do rentals in Dade, Broward County. And if someone calls me saying, I want a warehouse in Jupiter, I can't do that. That doesn't fit what I do. If you do rentals in Miramar and I say I want a rental in Miramar, but I'm using Section 8, you got to work with me because I'm qualified. But if I just can't get anything approved. If I just got out with a felony conviction yesterday, I don't have any income whatsoever, my housing voucher expired 3 months ago, things like that, you can't help me, and that's understandable. It just can't be a decision. It has to be a fact or fact, like, yes, this fits what I do, and no, this doesn't fit what I do. I hope that was good.
Documented. No, that's 100% right. And my cherry on top is that you document it in writing, right? You have a clear set of office policies and procedures, so that if you ever are sued or you are tested, right, and you get called to the carpet, you can show, look, I was following my procedures, my policies, my procedures, right? So if you're a commercial practitioner and somebody comes to you with a rental, a Section 8 rental, you can be like, look, I am not qualified to do rentals, right? I only do commercial. And that is a justified business decision based on your qualifications, right? But you need to reduce all of your policies to writing so that it is, and you need to adhere to them, right?
Yeah, and this is not a fact or fiction type of situation. This isn't like a did you or not. This is strictly on how you make people feel. If you are, in your mind, justifiably telling someone I can't work with you, but they feel offended or discriminated against, that's all that matters. They're going to file that complaint, and you're going to have to prove yourself innocent, which is very hard to do. Like, there was no document of that conversation, so it's your word against theirs, and they're probably going to have...
And they'll have a field day. Yeah. And they'll have a field day, right? So, in some of these housing discrimination cases, these Section 8 housing discrimination cases, you may think, cool, I have a policy and I'll adhere to it, right? Well, your actions had better line up with what your policies are, because they will subpoena your email. They'll see if you didn't respond to all of the folks who wrote in asking about Section 8. They'll look at your phone logs and see who you responded to first, right? They will look and see whether the people you responded to first had vouchers or not, right? There are lots of different, and they'll look at your client history, your customer history. They'll look at your deals. Who have you represented and who have you not, right? And so and they'll look through, who you didn't call back, and they're going to call them, right? So,
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Not answering the phone is just the same as saying, I won't work with you, because they feel like you're ignoring their call. So keep in mind.
Yeah.
Good points. All right. Like I was saying, they expired. If you do encounter an expired voucher, they do extend them. They grant extensions. It's just the person has to either call in or go to the housing authority to get an extension. And sometimes it's just so much going on. They'll just say, well, look, here's the voucher for now. Give me a few days until I go get it. I just want you guys to know that that does happen. That is a thing. Sometimes you'll see one expired, but they can get it renewed. But you would just have to tell them, I need the updated version before we can continue. That's what I do, at least.
Yes. And if you ever have, if your customers are ever having problems with the housing authority, this is what I did in a former life, is represent individuals who had vouchers. Again, the housing authorities, to make sure that the housing authorities were doing what they were supposed to do. Oftentimes papers get lost. The housing authority is not responsive. There are a whole lot of scenarios that, sometimes the owners are having issues with the housing authority as well. Refer them to legal services of Greater Miami, because they regularly represent individuals with vouchers to make sure they get extensions. And if somebody gets, you're only allowed so many extensions before you lose your voucher. So if you are working with a customer, I mean, that is a huge service that you can give to them, is make sure they get to legal services, that their voucher doesn't keep expiring because they don't want to lose it.
Yeah. Another question I want to touch on from the chat, Tamara asked, if their credit is low, can the owner refuse them? Number one, you want to, before you start, well, assuming you're the listing agent, you want to kind of develop qualifying criteria with the owner before you list this property. As the tenants broker, if you're submitting an offer, you want to submit the entire overall offer package. So the credit score shouldn't be the only deciding factor. You have to submit the credit report, their income, the voucher terms. All of this comes together to give the owner their decision. So if it's a crispy clean background, their personal income is well adequate to cover their portion of rent, housing's covered, the voucher's in line, they got the deposit ready, I don't see what the issue is. If they have, say, a 550 credit score, but they're only responsible for $150 a month for rent, it's not really that big of a deal breaker. I can understand if you look and it's, say, 5 consecutive evictions within the 5 last years or something like that, but even then, evictions can't really be a qualified. It's overall offer package. As a tenants agent, it's up to you to make whatever your situation look as good as possible. As a landlord's agent, it's up to you to, number one, have this knowledge of how your industry works. This is the real estate industry. You as a real estate professional should kind of know how little things like Section 8, something so prominent, works. So good job for everyone here for being here. You're doing the right thing and you care about your career.
And 100%. And also, because I'm just throwing cherries your way today, Khalid,
Yes.
I just dropped a tenant screening checklist in the chat that we put together at the association years ago now. And there's a webinar that we did with an attorney who represents landlords. And one of the things that stuck out from that webinar 4 years ago now that still sticks with me is he said, listen, tenants with low credit scores and no evictions, right? It is clear that they have been prioritizing paying their rent, right? So they might have a lower credit score because they didn't pay unsecured creditors like a credit card or something like that, but they've been prioritizing paying their rent. So keep that in mind, right? And that's something that you can use to advocate for your customers in putting together that package if you're working with tenants. And, credit score is not in and of itself a protected class, right? We talked about protected classes. So a credit score of a certain number, that's not a protected class. But if you think about who that has a disproportionate impact on, if you were to say no credit score at a certain point, I would be very, very cautious in having minimum credit scores because plaintiffs' attorneys get real creative with these discrimination lawsuits. So make sure that you are having a very fulsome tenant screening process. Like Khalid said, he was spot on in how you evaluate tenant packages. It has to be a totality of the circumstances determination. Same thing goes for criminal records, right? Look at criminal records and credit scores last, so it's not your main deciding point, right? There's a whole bunch of tips that you can pull from that tenant screening checklist and that training that we've done.
Love it. And last note on the credit topic, and I have two more questions from the chat I want to hit. You also want to know why owners care to look at credit. They want to see the whole report. Why is that? Why don't they just care about the score? It's because they want to see why is the credit what it is. If you look at a report and the credit score is low because of a six-figure hospital bill that they just can't afford to pay because they, I don't know, had to have their esophagus removed, I get it. I understand. Maybe there's other things they'd rather pay than pay for their esophagus removal. You know, it's out. It's out. It's gone. If it's just everything is late, nothing gets paid. They have 4 car repossessions. Every apartment they've ever lived in is in collections. They just, nothing's being paid. That's when, okay, we have something to really think about here. Why don't they pay anything? But you can see when their score is low, but they're still trying. So little things like that matters. And that's why you want to like zoom out, look at it all. And let me get off this slide. Let me finish these last things so we can get off this slide. Some families pay a portion of rent, some pay nothing. Housing authorities do have a thing known as a zero income family, where they understand this is a family of people. We got to make sure they're not in the streets. We got you covered. We will pay 100% of your rent. More often than not, they also have food stamps to cover food and maybe some other stipend to come in to cover, say, cleaning supplies or anything like that they have to get. And just the same, there's another agency that will come in and help them with the security deposit funds. And the biggest thing here, this was actually touched in the chat. Your requested rent amount may not be the price they pay. For example, I had a rental listing. It was a brand new construction townhouse. He bought it just to rent it out. He wanted $3,500 a month. I put it on Go Section 8. No, it's affordablehousing.com now because I put all my rental listings on there. It's great. Try it if you haven't been. And we got one. We submitted the application. We turned everything in. And when it finally came back, our amount of $3,500 was denied. They were only willing to pay us, say, $3,086. You can try to fight it. You can go back and say, look, here are some comps. I need you guys to come up. They will definitely look at it and try. And in fact, they came up another, I think, $40, but they didn't come up to this $3,500. My owner accepted this offer because the terms were just so consistent. His rent was coming, his mortgage was covered, and at the end of the lease term, he can go back and then try again to get closer to his $3,500 goal or whatever the market is at that time. So to answer your question, if the owner wants more than what the housing authority is willing to pay, they won't do it. And they won't let the tenant do it because the reason for this, they have a bunch of families they're trying to pay. They have a lot of people they're trying to make sure that they can get into homes and keep the more rent payments on time and consistent. So if they have to save $300 here and $200 there to make sure they can house 3 more families, they will do that. So it's just a matter of advising your owner what to expect. You're not obligated to accept the lower rent amount. They're just saying, if you want to work with us, this is the best we can do. They understand if you can't do it because everyone has different payments, different expenses. They get it. And before I get off the side, there was one question I really liked and I wanted to hit. It was, it's okay, we'll come back because we are down to 20 minutes. All right, how it works, the process. So these are the step-by-step guides to just, you get a Section 8 in use. Well, I want to use a specific word to make this sentence sound really smart. You get a Section 8 empowered offer and you want to accept it. Here's the, okay, so Section 8, they're going to give the tenant a voucher. How do you get a voucher? I don't really know, but I do know that there is a waiting list. And if I'm not mistaken, it's randomized. So it's not in order when you get on the list. You're just in it and you just hope for the best.
No, it's a horrible process. And each housing authority has its own waiting list for if they offer Section 8, because not every housing authority will offer Section 8 vouchers. If the housing authority offers Section 8 vouchers, they hold a waiting list. They open up the waiting list. Once people apply for the waiting list, then there is a lottery where you get placed on a randomized list of order, and they will call you in the order of your lottery number. There have been times where the waiting list has been closed for over 8 years while, Miami-Dade County has been working through the waiting list. Some people never come off of the waiting list. I mean, it is a really rough process.
Yeah, and the way the waiting list progresses is as vouchers expire or as people no longer need to use vouchers, they're bumped off and new people are coming in. The issue is there's a line of people that currently have vouchers, but they're just in limbo trying to get into properties for rent because there's so many realtors that have no idea how housing works. They can't work with them because they just, you know? So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
the affordability. The affordability question, and I've seen comments in the chat about this, the affordability question is hard, and folks with vouchers just, folks with vouchers are competing with individuals in the private market for housing. And right now it's, rentals are hot. So it is a tough market.
And they'll renew the voucher, they'll extend it a certain amount of times before they say, okay, we got to move on. So it's not an infinite. They give you a good amount of time. I've worked with people trying to help them find a property for their voucher for, I've had some people I've been doing it for like a year, honestly. But what can you do? I will say that instance that did take a year, she was not the best qualified. She did not have the best credit score, the best income. A lot was going for it, but I'm still willing to try. You got to do the hard work sometimes. It's not about coming in and being easy. These things make you better as a realtor. I'm a better negotiator now. Okay, so they get their voucher, they get their deadline, and they get their max budget. I remember the question now. Someone said someone sent them a voucher and it just had their name and it didn't say about an amount on it. That's okay. That's two different documents. Some housing authorities will just give you one document that just says, this is the person who's entitled to housing benefits, and here's how long they have to find a house. And then there's another page in the packet that says how much money they get. Sometimes it's outlined by zip codes. It'll say in this zip code, this zip code, this zip code, we will pay this, this, and this. And then it breaks it down by 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. And then it breaks it down further by if you only pay water, if you pay water and electricity. A lot of variables comes into how much they pay. So that's why they don't just put it on that page. Hope that helped. They find a property and they get an offer accepted by the landlord. At that point, the landlord drafts a lease between the landlord and the tenant. Just draft it, don't execute it. If there is an association, you have to apply for that association. This is kind of where it gets tricky because some associations will say we need an executed lease to even take your application, but housing is going to say, well, we want an unexecuted lease. In this instance, you would kind of have to put like contingencies in your lease. So in the lease, I would put contingent on successful housing authority inspection. It's also contingent on association approval. That way, if the association approves the tenant and housing doesn't, for whatever reason, your client's protected. Granted, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just what I do. Where are we here? Okay, boom. Apply for the association. Tenant and landlord submit the request for tenancy approval, known as the RTA, and the new vendor application known as the VA with the unexecuted lease and other requested docs. So to kind of go over this, there's two different packages that have to be filled out for housing. The first one is a RTA. It's just to approve the tenancy. This is with information of the property owner and the tenant and the terms proposed by the owner. For example, water's included. There's going to be a refrigerator, a dishwasher. All of that matters. While they're approving that, the owner themselves have to submit a vendor application. And in that, it's all information about the owner. Show us your deed. What's your bank information? Give us a W-9 so we can pay you. Both entities have to be approved. Housing has to approve the owner as a vendor, and they have to approve the property as a property. It's not just an inspection. They want to make sure that you own it. They look, and if the name on the banking information doesn't match the name on the owner information, they'll send it back and you got to start over. You don't want to do that. They review everything. They request changes. They'll ask questions if needed. They will email you. This is all electronically now. Once the owner is approved as a vendor by the housing authority and the tenancy is approved by the housing authority, then they will schedule inspection provided you were already approved by the homeowners association if present. After they schedule the inspection and you passed inspection, then they'll say, go ahead and schedule move-in. You can execute the lease. They'll say execute the lease with this day on it, and then they will set up the owner for their first and every recurring direct deposit payment. Once that's all done, you can conduct the walkthrough and the tenant will exchange their portion of funds for the keys. And then there's one more doc that the housing authority is going to give the tenant that they have to sign and send back saying, I paid them the money and they gave me the keys. That is when they will review that doc and release funding to the owner. So they will not release funding until the owner gives them the keys, they give the owner their money, and everyone signs off saying they moved in on this day, this time, we're good. All right. Things to note in your offers. So like I was saying, tenants are only responsible to bring their portion of first month's rent to walk through. The remainder will come from the housing authority, from ACH, and the owner just has to understand that they need to wait on that. What I've seen is owners will try to prevent the tenant from moving in or give the tenant an issue or try to serve the tenant a 3-day notice because they got the tenant's portion of funds, but they don't have the housing authority's portion of funds yet. It doesn't work like that. The housing authority, as long as everything is programmed and set up and everyone's on the same page, you know the funds are coming. It's usually up to the listing agent. The agent just didn't advise the owner that they'd have to wait. So they start freaking out, like, where's the money? It didn't come in. So just be sure that you are aware of the situation and can advise how it works. We touched on this, but verify that the property associations don't have a minimum income or credit score that's in their bylaws that you can't get around, in which case, like Evian said, you can take it up with the housing authority. But if the owner, it's a single family home with no association, and an independent owner has their own guidelines saying, I want this minimum credit score and I want this minimum income, you can negotiate with that. You can submit your offer just the same. You can still show that property and you tell them, here's the offer I'm presenting. Here's my tenant. This is all their opinionated, what is the word I'm looking for? Their opinionated criteria. I have encountered also a situation where I showed a property and I tried to submit an offer because it was Section 8. And then next thing I know, they say, oh, the owner wants $50,000 in minimum income. I'm like, for what? The rent's $1,100 a month, you know? So little things like that, you already know I sent a nice, well-written email to the board and you're not going to, put up my tenants like that. So let's see. Verify, okay, and be clear with timelines. Like I was saying, this is the biggest thing. You have to manage expectations. The biggest issue we have is because people just weren't expecting what they're getting into, and it makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. So if you can outline the process, outline how long it'll take, let them know there's going to be an inspection, let them know it's going to take a little bit to get the first month's payment, but advise them that it's worth it because in the end, they get that consistency. That consistency, you shouldn't have a problem. That works for me, just explaining it. If I explain it well enough, they're comfortable. Offer acceptance tips. Okay, so these offer acceptance tips, these aren't things you're just going to go out and do just out the gate. Any negotiation is going to be on a case-by-case basis, and you want to look at what is the current maximum for the voucher. There is no maximum. It depends on how many bedrooms they need, what area they're in, and how big the family is. They are going to make sure that they're giving you enough to whatever area you're trying to live in. So if it's Weston and rents are $4,000 a month there for a 5-bedroom, they'll give you around $4,000 a month. Sorry. Offer acceptance tips. So like I was saying, case-by-case basis. Don't just max out all your offers. That you can't do that. You have to care about your client's well-being. Offer more per month, increase the cap rate. This is in a situation where it's a multiple offer situation. The property's only been on the market for maybe a week or two. When you got there, there were so many other people in there looking at it, and you know that the voucher amount is within or higher than what this property is asking for this area. Then you can try to go slightly higher. Granted, don't I want to use a word, but I don't know if it, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. Meaning, if I have a prospect and they have a $3,000 a month voucher, and I show them a property that's $2,000 a month, and it fits, I'm not going to offer $3,000. You can't, they're going to be like, what's going on here? Even though they're not going to look at the listing, you still can't just max out your offers like that. It's even going to freak out the listing agent. If I'm a listing agent and you send me an offer that high over what I'm asking, my red flags go up. So offer slightly more, still within range. Do your comps. Don't treat this any differently. Do comps, see what other people are paying, and you'll know how high you can go. A larger security deposit to make owners more comfortable. This is a situation where you have maybe an unfavorable application. You know that your client has a really bad credit score for reasons that they just don't pay anything. Everything's late. everything is in collections. You want to offer a larger security deposit just so the owner has more funds to kind of back them up. Also, if your tenant has 3 dogs or something like that, anything that you know may like make an owner uncomfortable, a larger security deposit makes them feel more comfortable in the long run. And more per month, which increases their cap rate, makes them more comfortable for like now, you know? So if they're concerned about the property well-being, if they're concerned about getting paid on time, bigger security deposit. If they're concerned about, is it worth the risk, more per month. Does that make sense? Risk equals cap rate. The bigger cap rate equals the bigger risk. All right, letters of recommend.
I'm gonna jump in with a PSA because it's a really good comment that I want to elevate to the webinar, especially for those who watch the recording. For new landlords who are participating in the Section 8 voucher program, there's a $2,000 bonus for them being offered by Miami-Dade County right now. So I put the link in the chat. Make sure that is something that you can use to incentivize for your deals.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Let's see, where are we? Yes. Okay, letters of recommendation, that is my jam. No matter what offer I'm sending, I tell all tenant prospects I'm working with, Section 8 or not, no matter what, are you able to get some letters of recommendation from previous landlords, from your employer, from anybody, just because this is a world where I'm just sending you a contract to lease when you just read 5 of them that say the exact same thing, and you're just looking at applications and background checks and credit checks. A letter of recommendation gives them that much more insight on who your tenant is, and just shows other people are willing to take their time out to do something nice for this person. So it's probably someone I'd want to work with as well. No
and
more
just
than
be
2.
mindful. Be mindful, Khalid, that remember we went through that period of time where there was all the drama around buyer love letters in the and so be really mindful about not wading into the buyer love letter danger zone, which was the fair housing violation zone, because the buyer love letters that were coming up were like, I'm a family with 3 kids. We're a small, we're a small family from wherever, and we would love XYZ. Keep the recommendation letters to really factual things. Was a tenant with me for 10 years, never missed a rent payment, left the place immaculate, whatever. Talk about the place and not so much the people, which is, what we say about when you're putting up listings in the MLS anyway. Talk about the place, not the people. Excellent, took care of the place, always paid the rent, those types of things in your recommendation letters.
That makes perfect sense. And I'm assuming the reason for that is because when you do a love letter, like I'm a family of whatever, it sounds like accept me because of my familial status. To send a picture is saying accept me for what I look like. I get it. It makes perfect sense. Keep it vague. Keep it to the facts of what applies to this. Will they pay? Do they pay? Are they clean? Things like that. Yes. Okay. Include background check, credit, and income in all offers. Don't just send the voucher and a contract to lease, because it leaves so much to question. This is all about making the other party comfortable. The more comfortable you can do at making people, the more they're willing to accept what you're offering to them. So if you can show all the information, here's everything I got on the person I'm trying to move in, their background, their credit, their income, here's their housing voucher, this is their application, they got a dog, there's 2 cars, all of that. They're like, I don't even have any questions. I know everything I need to know here. What happens is if you don't give enough information, now they start formulating questions. And when they're in that question formulation spirit, it's like, am I asking enough questions? Well, let me think of some more questions. What else can I ask? And then you're just in that loop, and you're just gonna have a hard time. So make them comfortable out the gate and explain the process. I explain the process in my offer presentation. I'll say, listen, we're just gonna have to do an inspection. I work with Section 8 all the time. I'm very well versed on the process. I'll take charge. I got you covered. I'll make sure everything is on time and we don't get delayed if possible. A well-rented and presented offer package is probably the biggest thing. I'm primarily a listing agent. And when I see a poorly written offer, you got to understand, our clients are going to ask us what we think of this offer. And when they see us crossing stuff out and making all kinds of changes on your offer to lease, they're thinking, wow, there's that much wrong with this? Well, you didn't do any crossing out on that one. I want that one. So you just want to make sure your offer is well written and show that you know what you're doing. Because just the same, if the let's just say some owners ask the agent, what do you think? What I think is, well, this offer is just very much better presented, better put together, better, everything's just better here. So I think this one. So you don't want to be the one on the opposite side of the poorly written offer conversation. Show knowledge and understanding on the process. Like I keep saying, that is the biggest thing in this and any real estate transaction. If you're working with sellers, if you're working with buyers, the biggest success I have on listing presentations is just sitting there spewing out information so they don't have any questions and they just get tired of me talking and want to work with me. So the more information, just take classes. You're doing the right thing, keep doing this, and you'll build up your repertoire of information to build credibility and get people to work with you and do deals with you. Verify property association. We covered this many times. Just make sure that before you show a property that you're gonna be able to get through the condo association bylaws. Show properties and send offers quickly before competition can come in. So what happens with me is, or what used to happen with me is, I'll have a line of tenants. I'll work with multiple people and I'll get overwhelmed. So one tenant will say, hey, this property just came on the market. I want to see it. I'm busy. I procrastinate. I don't get around to scheduling it until 3 days later. Now, when I go show it 3 days later, they got 10 offers. I'm gonna have a hard time. So if you could just jump on it as soon as your client sends it to you, especially if you have them on an auto notification, they probably got it as soon as the listing agent hit submit. So jump on it, call them, get out there and show it, explain this process to the listing agent and just make them comfortable with you. So when you do show it and send the offer, it's, oh, it's Precious. I remember Precious, you know, so credibility is key. Be clear and explain the process.
To jump in, I have to run out right at 2 o'clock today, but I do want to, I will leave it in your very, very capable hands. And if anybody's seeing any issues with this that you need or want addressed, you can always email advocacy@miamire.com. Let us know what's going on. Tell us what you're seeing in the market, and we will follow up with you. And Khalid, I'm going to leave it again in your capable hands. Really grateful for you and this amazing presentation. And for those of you who are asking, we're going to be back here same time next week on Wednesday. And we'll be here on April 24th as well if you want more of this. And there will be more of it. Thank you, Khalid.
Absolutely. All right, we're almost done here. And then after this, I'll leave a few more minutes for any pop-up questions. Cool. But no legal questions. Don't ask me legal questions because Evian is gone. All right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about inspections. So when it comes to the inspection, the checklist can be found online. What I do is I just Google search whatever the housing authority for. So for example, Miami-Dade Housing Choice Voucher Program inspection checklist. I actually have it 2 slides from now. I'm going to show it to you. Don't worry. When you have this checklist, go into your listing or the property you're about to move your tenant into and just do a walkthrough before the inspection. Just make sure it's ready. If they come in, do inspection and have to fail it, they will leave. You'll have to fix the problem. They'll have to redo a whole nother inspection and they'll come back in like a week or 2. And if you fail again, you got to start over and you're talking another month or 2. So it's just not worth failing inspection if you can get ahead of it and make sure it's right up front. Someone must be present to let the inspector in. They will not use a lockbox. They're going to give you a big window. They're going to say, I'll be there sometime between 8 and 2. You got to be there from 8 and 2 the whole time. They call you when they're on their way and they'll say, I'm 20 minutes away. So just make sure you're there, because if they get there and you're not there, they won't wait 2 minutes for you. They will get back in their car and move on to the next inspection because they're backed up. If the power was off, some vacant properties, the power is just off and they just activated it for this inspection, get there a day in advance and turn on the AC. I had a situation where the power was out. We got there for inspection. We turned on the AC right before the inspector walked in and he failed us because it was hot. Doesn't make sense. I told him it has to be ready. So because it was hot in there, we failed the inspection and had to start over. The inspection itself, it's a walkthrough inspection. It takes about 15 minutes. They have their checklist. They know what they're looking for. They're going to come in with you and they're in and out in 10 to 15 minutes. It is not a long thing. It must be move-in ready, clean, no furniture unless it's rented furnished and that's in the lease. All appliances listed must be working. I had a situation where in my voucher, I put that the unit had a garbage disposal, and when they got there and flipped the switch, it didn't turn on and I failed inspection. So it was a simple fix. I think the breaker just switched. So I had to switch the breaker and they had to come back. So please double check your units before your inspection. If your property has a pool, it has to have a covering or a safety gate. children and families is a big point for them, so they make sure it's safe. They don't want anyone drowning or falling in. Your pool has to be covered. Bedrooms. If your property is a 3-bedroom property, all 3 bedrooms have to have windows and a closet. If it does not have a window and a closet, take it from me, they will fail you. And it's a big fail because when they fail you for not having a window or a closet, they're telling you this isn't a 3-bedroom, this is a 2-bedroom, and we're only gonna pay you as such. Remember, they pay in tiers. A 2-bedroom will not get as much money as a 3-bedroom will. So that's a big thing. I had a situation, I had a room that didn't have a closet. One room didn't have a closet, one room didn't have a window. We had a closet put in. That was easy. It took 2 days to build a closet in this room. But the window, my owner was not willing to do that. What can you do? Failed missed inspections must be rescheduled days away. If you fail too many inspections, you have to reapply, and you're talking another month and a half, 2 months. Right here is a copy of the Miami-Dade Agency's Housing Authority's inspection checklist. It's a 2-page doc. This is just page 1, just outlining what I said. They won't just walk in. They won't come in with a lockbox. They won't, they come in annually. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to take a picture of this if you want it. I'm gonna send the slides out, but not now. And here's page 2. 3, 2, 1, boom. Page 2. This is the actual inspection checklist. Take a picture. Show your friends. Show your fellow landlord clients, and just let them know if you got a Section 8 inspection coming up, no matter what authority it's in, they're more often than not going to use this checklist or something similar. So now you can go through your listings with this and know if you're going to be able to do Section 8 or not. Boom. All right. And a couple reasons Section 8 may not work for you. I sure wish Evian was here to shut me down if I shouldn't show you this. But if the property can't pass the inspection, I actually think someone asked me this as a question. If you can't pass inspection and the owner can't afford or agree to the required repairs, you can't do it. If the owner wants or requires more rent than the housing authority is willing to pay, you can't do it. If the property is only being partially rented, for example, if it's a room for rent, I don't know. I haven't tried this. You will want to talk to the caseworker. They do have 1-bedroom vouchers out there. So if someone say has a 1-bedroom voucher, I worked with an Army veteran one time who had a 1-bedroom voucher. So ask the caseworker. I guess it's a case-by-case basis if it's an efficiency, a studio. I think a studio will be okay. If it's an efficiency or like a room for rent. Or if the owner just can't be approved by housing as a vendor for whatever reason, maybe, I don't know, they don't have the deed in their name. Maybe I couldn't tell you reasons they wouldn't be approved. I don't know why they wouldn't be approved, but that's a reason you won't be able to do Section 8. In the event you tried to work with Section 8, meaning you just had a Section 8 applicant, you went all the way to inspection, for whatever reason it didn't work out, and someone asks you, do you take Section 8? You're still going to have to say, yes, anyone can apply. But this is where you can tell them what happened. You can say, well, me at least, this is not legal advice. I say, yes, everyone can apply. All are welcome. But we just tried to do a Section 8 deal and they denied us because of, and then you just insert why it didn't work. And now you're clear. You're showing we're okay with it. We're willing to work with it. But here's what went wrong when we last tried to do it. It wouldn't pass the inspection because this room doesn't have a closet. They wanted to rent it as a 2-bedroom, but the owner wants to rent it as a 3-bedroom, you know? I feel like that's the gist of this slide. Right here, take a picture, put it in your phone, the Florida Realtors Legal Hotline. If you have any legal question, if you are about to do something, someone asks you to do something and you're not sure if it's legal or if you can do it or not, call the legal hotline, you enter your license number, and I don't know if it's a lawyer or a legal assistant, someone legal will get on the phone with you, listen to you, and will give you their legal opinion. This is not advice for you to give to your clients, though. They need to get their own lawyer. This hotline is for you to keep yourself out of trouble. I hope that helped. This is me. Follow me on Instagram, give me compliments, tell me how good of a job I did, and ask me follow-up questions if you have questions after today. That's the end of this. I'm gonna open the floor for questions for a few minutes. I guess we could go to like 2:10, something like that with questions. Let me see what we got in the chat. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Will you be sending a copy of the recording? So I don't have the recording myself. Miami Realtors has it. I think that if you go on the Miami Realtors YouTube channel, you will see last year's class. I can assure you that. This one might be uploaded, but I don't know if they would upload the same class twice. It can't be a room for rent. It has to be one bedroom or efficiency. Thank you, Judy. I did not know that. Judy just helped us. If a landlord gets a property approved for Section 8. Oh, if you guys are done, you don't have any questions, you guys could just go. Otherwise, just stick around and watch me answer questions. Joseph, yeah, go ahead. You can unmute. I think we're not recording no more, right?
Hi, how are you, Khalid?
Good, man. How
I
are
have a
you?
question. Let's say a single family home.
Mhm.
It has converted garage into an efficiency. Will that property qualify for Section 8, even though there's an efficiency there?
So I don't know for sure from what Judy says from her experience, because Judy is also not with the housing authority. She said there has to be a one bedroom or an efficiency. I'm imagining she meant efficiency as in a studio, though. I would ask the housing authority. My question for them would be, I think they may want the tenant to have the entire structure. If they have to share it with someone, they may have an issue with that. Assumably, I don't know. That's a tricky one. You have to try. I think if they're renting the entire house with the efficiency, they won't care. But if you just want just the efficiency, they may care.
No, just the entire house without the efficiency.
So the entire house with the efficiency is separate.
Without the efficiency.
I get it. No, I don't think you could do that because then there's an exclusion of the house.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
no problem. What happens if there are cracked tiles? They will fail you for cracked tiles because I've been failed for having a cracked tile. They look at it as if the kids are playing with no shoes on, they will cut their foot open and no one wants that. So you will have to replace that cracked tile. You can't even, if you put a rug under it, they might, I don't know. Fix it, fix the cracked tile, fix it. Can I turn down Section 8 if the neighbor's neighborhood are against Section 8? That is definitely discriminatory and you should report that. What about homes with pools? Yeah, pool homes have to have a gate around them with a link to recording. I don't think so, but it's on the Miami Realtors YouTube. Thank you, thank you. Okay, Jeannie asked, what if the tenant is looking at properties on her own? I don't fully understand the question, but assuming you're the listing agent and the tenant approaches you saying, hey, I want to rent this on Section 8, nothing changes. They tell you the offer terms they want to make because you work with that landlord. Granted, I'm a transaction broker. I don't know if you're a transaction broker, but in the event you're a transaction broker, you represent the transaction, not an independent party. So you would do what's best for the house. Okay. Is anybody, did I miss anybody's question? I feel like, can you unmute me to ask an income question? Mark, I think you can unmute yourself, my man. I don't know where you are. All right. We good here? Any other questions? I'm gonna be back next week, next Wednesday. Sign up. Typically every lease you know that, okay, it does not unmute. All right, I got you. Let me see. Let's see. Mark, how do I do this? Raise your hand. Can you raise your hand, Mark? Because I don't even know where you are in all of this. Oh, not physically. I got you. Oh, you know what? Physically, because that worked. I sure did find you, didn't I? I just asked you to unmute. Did you get a notification?
Now it allowed me to unmute.
There we go. How you doing?
Good, thank you. I appreciate the class. Trying to understand exactly income in terms of when you talked about 2.5 times, 3 times income, but you said only look at the portion that they have to pay, which doesn't make sense because if they have to pay $100, you're saying that with $300 income, that's sufficient, but that's not really sufficient for them to pay for food, gas, insurance, car, and we can see even maybe credit cards and car payments on their credit report. So when you're looking at income, how would you better assess somebody who can viably pay what they need to do and still live there?
So in a situation like that, you'd have to understand that there's a lot of other agencies working together to help most families. So while yes, their income is only high enough to cover like that portion of the rent, but when it comes to food, more often than not, there's food stamps to cover with that. I don't know what other stipends they may have for like their monthly expenses, like their car and everything, but they should be presenting all of that to you in your offer. It's just when it comes to like qualifying the property, if their rent's only $100 a month, there's a good reason their portion is only $100 a month. It's because the housing authority deemed that's all they can afford and still live their life. So I would still consider taking that, especially if they can show Social Security or whatever other form of income they have to cover their extracurriculars.
If they can't prove any of that stuff, then is that sufficient reason to
Well,
deny?
it would, I mean, your concern is, can they afford this house? Your concern wouldn't be, could they like wash their car or anything like that, you know? So if they can prove that they can afford the house and prove that they can afford their portion of rent, that's your concern as a real estate broker or agent, you know? But I do understand, like if their portion is $500 a month and they don't have any income to show how they're gonna pay that $500 a month, then okay, that's understandable, in which case you can't approve that.
So Khalid, we have a question that says, what if the efficiency is not legal? You're muted.
Unmute.
No? You're
Unmute.
muted.
Can you hear me now?
Now you're okay.
Okay, perfect. So in the event, I'm assuming you mean a single family house with like a room that's just cut out as an efficiency. I don't think they would let you rent out a portion of the house, because that would be like a room for rent. I think you would have to have the whole structure, if I'm not mistaken. I'm assuming this order. Okay, I'm gonna do Jeffney and then Precious. Okay, Jeffney, I just unmuted you, or I asked you to unmute. I don't know.
Hi,
They should
Khalid.
be able, yeah.
Hi. Okay, I have two really quick questions. The one is, when you're dealing with a voucher where your client has to pay a portion of the rent, you were saying something about making sure that's a legal process, in the sense of, so what if does the housing authority notify me that they can pay an additional, let's say $200 or $300? Or is that something that I send over to the housing authority with the packet? Like, how would that work?
So when the housing authority intakes somebody, they do an income screening. They ask you to turn in all your pay stubs, all your bank statements. They want to look at every piece of money you bring in before they give you this voucher. And they look at it and they say, okay, based on how much you make, you can afford this much a month for housing. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 30% of their income. Whatever their income is, they'll have them pay 30% of that. If you need they won't let them pay more than that. The most that can happen is the housing portion can be increased. So for example, your property is 2,500, they only want to give 23, you have to ask housing to kick in that extra 2. The tenant cannot, because housing already deemed they can't afford to pay more than that. So whatever the rent is, the housing authority is going to say, here's how much I'll give you, and here's how much the tenant's going to give you.
I got you. So the tenant can't pay out of pocket, but it's basically a portion of their voucher, that amount.
Yes,
The voucher they already know based on their voucher, is basically what you're saying.
Right, but it won't be on the voucher. The voucher itself may not have their portion on it. You're gonna have to ask them, do you have a portion of rent, or are you paying 100%? They know. The housing authority is gonna tell them this is how much they can pay you.
Okay, so you want to be able to get as much paperwork from them, from the housing authority, so you can clarify. Okay,
You just
and then
want the same thing you would want from anybody else. You're gonna say, send me a copy of your ID. I need your most recent pay stubs and your last 4 pay stubs,
everything.
bank statements, just the same. Nothing changes. And then you have your voucher. So what you're gonna do is, when you present your offer, you're gonna submit their pay stubs, their bank statements, and the voucher as a proof of income.
Got it.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
a Section 8 voucher is just income. It's just like a check.
got it. Then really quick, the other question, as a landlord myself, even if I don't have the tenant ahead of time, I can go ahead and do the vendor application. I can be approved as a vendor prior to actually having a tenant.
Mm-hmm. You would just go to whatever housing authority the property is in. If it's in Miami-Dade Housing Voucher Choice Program, and you just sign up as a vendor. And if I'm not mistaken, they may even let you do the inspection to be ready. I think. I don't know for sure, but I think.
Our understanding is that they would. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you so much.
No worries. Where did Precious go? Precious, raise your hand again if you're still here. I got you. I'm gonna answer your question.
Well, we've got Mina that just asked something on the chat, and she says, if the Section 8 tenant is doing illegal activities such as selling drugs, If I report it to HUD with an evidence, a police report, can the landlord terminate the lease without eviction?
Okay, so this is a good question
Yeah.
because this situation is not a Section 8 situation. You have a tenant that is doing illegal activity in your property. This isn't, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to word it as I have a Section 8 tenant doing it. It's just a guy. You have a guy doing that just happens. So no, this is a tricky question because I know some owners, they will include anti-crime addendum in their leases. I don't know verbatim what our lease says about crime. I do know the landlord tenant act is in the back of it. It might be covered on there, but there is a way to handle that. If I'm not mistaken, this is legal advice. This is a legal question. I would call an eviction attorney and explain the situation and let them give me the best way to evict this person. If I'm not mistaken, you'll need to do a 7-day notice to cure, but I don't know. I don't know if this is a Section 8 specific thing. Yeah, 7-day notice to cure. Anything they're doing in there that's against the lease or you don't want them doing, 7-day notice to cure. And if they do it again within that 7 days, they're evicted. They're not evicted, but you start the process. Legal advice, not a lawyer. Who's next? Who's next? I don't know where the chat went, so I'm hoping. Okay.
I'm looking.
Okay. Okay. I don't see Precious again, so I'm guessing she got
I
her
don't
question
see
answered.
Precious either.
Probably went on somewhere. That's okay.
Wait,
Right.
we just got 2 new ones. Thank you so much for the class. See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Good to see y'all.
Give up on my way.